Wow, forgive me, my eyes are leaking a little bit after that. Our second prepared speaker today is Carl Dormeyer, and Carl is giving speech number 2 in his series entitled My Toastmaster History. His speech is entitled Tale of Three Clubs, Strict, Bizarre, and Laid Back. Please welcome Carl Dormeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I really wasn't looking for more applause, but I realized my evaluator didn't have my manual, so I got more applause that way. Now, you may recall a few weeks ago in my icebreaker in my current trip through the CC manual, I talked generically about my Toastmasters career and said I'd get a little more specific in subsequent speeches. So today, I want to talk about 3 very interesting clubs that I've belonged to. One which was quite strict, one which was rather bizarre, and one which was very laid back. Now, last time I mentioned that when I first joined Toastmasters, it was in Asheville, North Carolina, which was Asheville number 436, and this was a strict club. For starters, it met on Thursday evening for 2 hours, and it met in a hotel, and we had dinner. And dinner only cost $2. Now that's how long I've been in Toastmasters. So every week we had to go through the process of paying for a meal and dealing with the waitresses and so forth, and so we learned some of the tough issues. And because we had 2 hours, we had a 20-minute business meeting, we had used parliamentary procedure, and there was always a good experience in this area as well as speaking and evaluating. Now this club had some interesting features as part of its culture. First of all, if you were president of that club, that was your role. You didn't get assigned speeches, you didn't evaluate, you weren't general evaluator, you were president. And you got your speaking in during the business meeting. And for 6 months you were off the hook as far as roles were concerned. I found that a bit interesting, but it seemed to work for that club. Another very interesting feature they had that I've seen repeated in evening clubs years ago, but I haven't seen it in most clubs because we don't have time to do it. And that is an impromptu function where the president calls on someone in the audience to introduce the membership. So, for example, the president Mayada might say, Arnie Buss will introduce the membership, and Arnie would get up and introduce the people around the room by name and where they worked. And eventually what this forced us to do is to get to know not only the names of the people in the club, but what they did for a living and so forth. And if you messed it up and you couldn't get it, you get called again the next week. You kept getting called on until you got it right. So you can see I was very impressionable in those days, and that's part of why I am who I am today in Toastmasters, a little bit more structured than perhaps others might be. Now I mentioned in my icebreaker that this particular club passed judgment on the speeches. You either passed the speech and you went on to the next speech in the manual. You couldn't skip around. You went to the next speech in the manual. Or they made you do it again. And I remember telling you folks a month ago that when I got to the number 5 speech, which was vocal variety, and I thought I was a really hotshot speaker, they flunked me. They made me do it again because I didn't totally fulfill the rules or the requirements of that particular assignment. So it was good for me that that happened. But I recall one poor gent that was really struggling through Toastmasters, and he got to speech number 4, which at that time was the hands-up speech, where you're supposed to use your body gestures. I guess it's called Your Body Speaks now, and it's not number 4 anymore. At any rate, he gave a speech on how you make ladies' pajamas. He was actually in the clothing business in Western North Carolina, textile mills and so forth. So he gave a speech on making ladies' pajamas, and he had lots of visual aids. It was a rather mundane speech, and they flunked him. He said, you need to do it again. So a month later he came back, and he gave the same speech on ladies' pajamas. He flunked again. A month later he came back, did it a 3rd time, but he picked it up a little bit, and they passed him. So this poor gent had 3 tries before he got on to the next speech. We don't do that at Toastmasters anymore. I'm afraid people would walk out of the club. But that's how strict that club was. So let's moving on to the next club, which I consider one of the more bizarre clubs I belong to. This club is now called the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard Toastmasters Club. At the time, it was called PERA, P-E-R-A, which stands for Planning, Engineering, Repairs, and Alterations. And so there was this one group of people that had the club. Now the problem was, it was a noon club, and you only got 40 minutes for lunch. And at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, there's a whistle that blows at 20 minutes to 12, and another one that blows at 20 minutes after 12, and that allows you to leave for lunch, and you better be back when that second whistle blows. So what we had to do is run to the meeting place, and we had a half an hour. So the first day, we did it on 2 consecutive days, a Wednesday and a Thursday. First day, we had the Toastmaster, the speakers, and the evaluators. The second day, we had the table topics and the functionaries. Now, the problem was not everybody showed up the same on both days. So the general evaluator did great the first day, but he wasn't there the second time, so he couldn't give the general evaluation. The grammarian was only there the second day, so he had no grammarian's report for the first half of the meeting, and so it went. But we did the best we could and struggled along, and the club still exists. Then the third club, more of a laid-back club, actually was formed when I was a division governor many years ago, and Art has that position now. But there was a club in Salinas called the Salinas 49ers. It was an evening club, and it basically failed, but it had number 49, and the district wanted to save this number. So it formed a club which is called, and it still exists, called Gold Brickers. Gold Brickers is a club of current and past district officers. And we met once a month in a social environment, pretty much, in somebody's house or you know, some community center or something, and at potlucks, and it was a lot of fun. And somebody got up and talked for a bit, and somebody said, "Yeah, you did great," and that created the, you know, we met the requirement of having a speech and an evaluation once a month. Well, the club doesn't, I don't think it's meeting right now, and it's a bit of a thorn in the district's side, but it still exists. So there we are, 3 clubs. One gave me a foundation of doing things the proper way in Toastmasters and to try to help people learn through the experience that they have in the organization. The second one taught me to be flexible because you never know who wasn't going to show up the next day. And the third one is to never forget to have fun, because if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.